everybody, and welcome to another episode of Adventures with Andy. Today, we're going to make some art using this. Now, I know what you're thinking. Andy, that's your watercolor palette. You make art every time you use that. And you're right. This is my watercolor palette. When I use it, I'm always making art. But today, we're going to try something a little bit different. Do you remember when we made the watercolor paw prints? We dyed the watercolor paw prints yarn and how it was so hot that the ice cubes, the dye that we had frozen into the paw print ice cubes started to melt before we could get them on the yarn. So we just took that liquid part and we poured it underneath onto the bottom part of it. That's what we're going to do with this today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mix up some big puddles of color, and then we're just going to pour them onto sheets of watercolor paper that I'm going to take down onto my desk here, and we're going to see if we can kind of recreate the same sort of thing that we got with the watercolor paw prints yarn, that underside of it. All right, so I've got 4 sheets of watercolor paper stretched onto my desk. The paper I'm using today is again the Canson XL, and this is just regular, brown gum tape, craft tape. The one thing I did different from the last time that I stretched watercolor paper in a video is that instead of using a washcloth to dampen the craft tape, I just took the strips and sort of just very quickly ran them through a tub of water and then laid them down and smoothed them with a washcloth. They're just too long to use a washcloth to get them wet. They were really sticky if I tried to do it that way. It was just really hard to work with. So it was easier to do it just quickly dipping them through water. And it seemed to work fine. It stuck down pretty well. The paper is still slightly damp. That's fine. And I'm gonna start with mixing up what I already have here in the middle sections into just a really liquidy, lots of water in here. And we're going to do this color by color, because if I were to mix all of these together in one, it would not be like with food coloring dyeing yarn where we could get some breaking. Instead, they would just turn to brown. We'd get mud. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to just sort of pour it on here. And then I'm going to move over to the next color. I'm going to do this green next. This green. And this is really just leftover paint from when I was painting something. And it mixes back up again really pretty easily. The watercolor that I'm using here is Daniel Smith watercolor. These are all from the Basic 6 set. I've got on here, I had put all 6, the Hansa Yellow Light, the New Gamboge, the Transparent Pearl Orange, Quinacridone Rose, French Ultramarine, and Phthalo Blue, all around here. The 2 yellows, the 2 reds, and 2 blues together. You can see which ones I ran out of first, because all I have left on here now is the Hansa Yellow Light, I believe that's Phthalo Blue. Yeah, I think that's Phthalo Blue, and the Transpearl Red. Or sorry, Transpearl Orange. It's not Transpearl Red. We will end up with much, much more liquid to go around soon, I promise. I just want to get these base things off first. And I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but I thought it'd be interesting to try. This is the cleanest I've seen my watercolor palette in a long time. My palette, by the way, is just a cheap plate that I picked up at the dollar store. The online watercolor class that I took when I was first starting out, that's what she used. It's what she recommended. And so that's what I did. I saved my money to buy nice paints and nice paint brushes. My paintbrush, in case you're curious, is a Princeton. This is an 8. I'm not using it for any reason other than the fact that it is the largest one that I have close at hand. So it's really good for mixing colors. I don't use it for painting a lot. I mean, sometimes, but I've got a smaller brush that I use for when I'm doing paintings because I'm usually working a smaller scale that needs a little bit more detail. Sometimes when I'm doing backgrounds, I need a bigger brush like this. This is good for doing like gradients and washes for skies and things like that. But when you're getting down into the detail work or semi-detail work, brass hinges and light switches and things like that, yeah, at that point you'll want a much thinner brush. That's doing pretty cool. It's spreading out pretty nicely. I'm guessing the paper was a little bit more wet there. And there as well. And you'll get to see a little bit how watercolor works differently in capillary action than food coloring on yarn. I guess I should say it's not the watercolor so much, it's paper does different with capillary action than yarn. And you can see now that I'm to these really big blobs, I got a lot of color to work with here. I think I'm just going to mix the rest of this red. Into one big puddle. Put a lot of water in here. So we have a really big puddle. See if I can pour a little of this. This is not something I would normally do with watercolors, but because I'm on that big puddle, I'm going to try to pour water in here without making a huge mess, which it looks like, hey, I managed to pour a whole lot of water in here without making a huge mess. Look at me, yay. This is what I was wanting, great big puddle. And this is why I had 4 sheets of paper instead of just one. The little bits I've got on right now probably could have been contained to 1 sheet of paper, but I wanted to get really big puddles like this. I mean, that's a lot of color right there. I know I'm cheating. I'm pulling that up there. That's okay. It's art. I can do what I want. Take care of this yellow real quick. I've still got some red on the plate though, and my water is orange, and I'm not going to go out and rinse it just for that. So I'm not really going to get true yellow so much as orange. That's okay. This one looks like a brick red to me. It's kind of cool. a mustardy yellow. Didn't really have a whole lot of that yellow to do anything with. I like how doing this gets a little flecks of paint on the paper too. And it has the added bonus of helping clean off my palette. All right, I'm gonna wipe my palette real quick. Because I want to start out with a clean area for mixing this blue so the blue doesn't get muddled. Even though we were dealing with that red, it would not give me a true purple to mix that red. For one thing, it kind of had a brown tone to it, but also because if you've ever mixed watercolors and you've had trouble where you're not really getting, you know, bright, vibrant green, that's because to do that, to get a nice vibrant green, you have to be using a red and a blue that are both cool or both warm. And that transparent orange is warm while the phthalo blue is cool, if that makes any sense. I'm not really good at explaining it because it's something I just learned recently watching a YouTube video, so I'm not exactly expert. I need to do something about this right here because it's wanting to escape and I don't want it to. You are not allowed to escape and take over the world, no matter how much you try. Don't get a whole lot of color from that. This is a very absorbent cloth. All right, and I need fresh water because this is pretty much just down to orange. All right, I'm back. I've got some fresh, clean water and I'm ready to start mixing up my blue. Make sure my paintbrush is nice and clean. Yes, it is. Go ahead and just pour a little bit of water because I know I want a great big huge amount. This is one of my favorite shades of blue. This is just so gorgeous. And just look at that. That is just so pretty. Some more water in here so I can get some more mixed up. I have no idea why I have so much of this left, unless it's just that I put a whole lot more on here than all the other colors. Because I love this blue and it's so pretty. That means I will have lots of it to use for this. I need to get a blow dryer in here so I can move this around with some air. That will result in some coolness, I think. Okay, that might have been a little bit too much water. We'll deal with it. It's okay. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. If I had thought to take this down to like a drawing board instead of my desk, then I could pick it up and shift it different ways, but I didn't think about that. I have to remember that for next time. Just a little bit of yellow on here. I'm going to try to mix the two of them together. Get sort of greenish. Just a very little bit. Not a whole lot. Some of these rivers of colors coming through here are just so cool. I think that's about all we're going to get out of it, but hey, my palette's essentially clean. Whoops, and I've got paint spilling all over my floor. It was quite a lot of paint. I think the tape failed because there was so much liquid. That's why I have all these cloths. Which, if you noticed, yeah, they basically came clean. These are the ones that I used in the video where I had used these to mop up and wipe up food coloring when I was dyeing yarn, even though they're supposed to be for when I'm doing watercolors. So I used them to try to transfer some of that onto watercolor paper because I knew it would wash out, and yes, it pretty much did. All right, I'm going to go and see if I can get my blow dryer to see about moving some of this color around a little bit, because I don't think I'm going to be able to blow on it enough to do that. I can do it some, but not as much as I'm wanting to. It's hard to get close the way everything's situated. I'm also going to I'm going to put some cloths right along here as well. And along here, as it seems like that color wants to leak through here, and I don't want any more on my floor. That is just cool. All right, I'll be right back. I changed my mind. I am not going to go get my blow dryer to blow this watercolor around. Instead, I'm going to play a little bit with capillary action. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint just some plain white, just some plain water onto dry places on this paper, and then sort of link that with the big puddles so we can see that color go through that wet. So I'm gonna just, and you can see there's no color in what I'm putting in here. I actually got some just more fresh water, and I'm just painting it on here. I'm just going to see, check that out. That's what watercolor will do. It will pull from wet to wet. And it'll stop where that wet is. It won't go any further than that. And it's actually a technique that you can do when you're painting watercolor and you're doing detail areas and you don't want to get any paint in those really fine areas, and you don't want to use masking fluid, or you don't have any masking fluid. You can paint the area around it with just clear water like this, and then you just drop in your color and it will stay in those wet areas and won't spread beyond them. And just as soon as it touches that wet is when it starts to spread. I think that's really cool. It's a really cool technique. And it gives us the opportunity just to play a little bit with the way these are going to mix together and the way the color is going to spread. You see? I accidentally picked up some color there. I just want to fill in some of these white areas. There's just a little bit of color. And it seemed a fun way to do it. I don't really want to mess with this too much because that is just cool the way that's doing. And this is honestly the kind of thing I could just sit and play all day doing this. Honestly, some of these, the way they're spreading, it's like, do I want to mess with it too much? Kind of like how it is. But we've got some really big color going on in places. Very saturated. And we've got some places that are a whole lot of white. For this one, I'm actually going to steal some of this color up here. Just suck it up into my brush and just drop it in here. And we're actually going to end up with some blooms over here because of this. In fact, all of these places where I've added the water in, we're probably going to end up with some blooms. And that'll be an interesting texture that we get with it. I'm also going to scoop up this right here. These brushes hold a lot of water and they like to hold on to it. I just want to get one drop right there. That's cool. If I want blooms in there, I might have to come back afterwards to get them. There's a little bit, but not a whole lot, because there's still a lot of water in there. And we've got some, like little stars. This poor craft tape, it's trying so hard. And I'm just putting so much on it. That was cool. I don't know if you saw that, the way it spread and the color split out on it. Right, I think we are good for now. I'm gonna let this just sit and dry. I'm also gonna mop up some of this excess dampness on the craft tape. And here are our finished canvases. Okay, technically they're not canvases, it's watercolor, but this is what we got. I think these turned out fantastic. They really look really cool. And I do see a different image in each one. Look at them one at a time. Depending on how you turn it, you see something different. I'm not going to tell you what I see in each of these because I'm going to release a series of videos later on where I actually draw on these and turn them into a full piece of artwork. But I do see something in each one of them. I'd be curious to see what you see in them. Drop me a note in the comments below and tell me, what do you see in each of these? What do you think I should turn them into? This one is probably my favorite, but you won't really understand why until after I finish the whole thing. Anyway, I think this turned out really cool. I'm definitely gonna have to try this again sometime. It's fun just to not worry at all about how it's going to turn out and just throw some paint on the paper and then turn everything in different directions and see what you see and just let your imagination run with it. So keep an eye out for those videos. They will be coming out. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you do that and turn on notifications so you don't miss those videos. And I hope you had fun watching me do this. Give it a try yourself, and if you do, drop me a comment below and let me know. I'd be really interested to see how it turned out. Have a wonderful day. Take good care of yourself, and I will see you on our next adventure. Bye.